third amateur, Kevin. Former high school player, hasn't played for a little while, but now is getting back into the game. And Kevin is the best of our three amateurs. Now we're going to look at two of his forehands. He's got the first one on the green screen behind me to start. As he begins his motion, pivot in the shoulder turn, lets go of the racket a little bit too soon. Same problem that Lucien and John had. He does pivot and turn the shoulders fine otherwise. So this looks good. As he brings the racket back, you'll notice that the racket is coming up. He's going to have that C motion in there. And he is the first one of our amateurs to have that. And this C is going to facilitate a continuous swing pattern. So Kevin, unlike Lucien and John, has that fifth fundamental down. Kevin also has done a nice job of loading up on his outside leg. He's got the weight there. But his non-hitting arm is pointed into the court. Same problem as Lucien and John. Doesn't extend it out across his body like he should. When he swings, well, he doesn't actually push off his outside leg. You'll notice that the weight actually centers over both feet, and then he pushes off both legs as he swings. So that's a bit of a mistake. And he rotates back towards the court to get his body facing the net, but he's a little jammed on his forehand. He's not fully rotated. But if we look at the swing, the racket does drop down and swing forward like we talked about before. So the swing, the path the racket is traveling along is correct. Because he's a little jammed at his contact point, follow through is going to be a little bit off. Doesn't extend out in the court as much as he would like, and he doesn't turn his forearm and wrist over like he has a watch on. He kind of goes over there. So it's a little bit of a constricted follow. So in that first forehand, Kevin made some of the same mistakes as Lucien and John. Well, let's look at a forehand he hit a lot better. This is from the side perspective. And when he pivots and turns his shoulders, both hands are still on the racket. So he has corrected that error in this particular forehand. When he takes the racket back, he's got that C shape in there. Weight is loaded up on the outside leg. Body is sideways. Other arm is still pointed into the court. But if he were simply to point that arm at the camera, then his preparation would look fantastic. Pretty good as is, but it would be great preparation if he could change the direction he was pointing that arm. The swing pushes off the outside leg perfectly. That looks fine. Body rotates back towards the net. He's facing the net now at contact. We rewind it, watch the path of the racket, drops down, swings forward. And at contact, this looks great. This is a nice contact point right here. Nothing you need to change about that. Body facing the net, he puts off his outside foot. Contact point out in front. Swings flat on the back of the ball. And because he did all that stuff real well as he swung to contact, his follow-through is going to look pretty solid as well. He extends out in the direction that he's hitting the ball, very nice extension. Turns the forearm and the wrist over like he has a watch on. Finishes across his body in a nice smooth motion. And if we rewind to contact, body also continues to rotate after he's hit. So we can see with this forehand that Kevin is inconsistent, but when he does things correctly, when he hits the ball right, he hits a very solid forehand. Only a couple tweaks in there that he needs to make this a pretty high-level shot. With that in mind, let's now move on to comparing this forehand with Tommy Hoffman's forehand. Both pivot and turn their shoulders to start the motion, and Kevin has left both hands on the racket. He looks very similar to Tommy right now. Not really too much difference. When they take the racket back, both load up on the outside leg. Racket comes all the way back. Bodies are sideways. There is a difference between Tommy's non-hitting arm that's extended out across his body properly versus Kevin. He's pointing in the court like we said before. But otherwise, this preparation looks very good. Swinging to contact, they both push off the outside leg, rotate their bodies back towards the net. Both are facing the net at contact. Now, if we rewind it and watch the path the racket travels along, looks like a C for both Kevin and Tommy. The swing looks very similar. And at contact, both Kevin and Tommy are facing the net, hitting the ball out in front of their body, strings are flat on the back of the tennis ball. You may be saying, well, their non-hitting arms are in different spots. That is not a fundamental. You'll see pros have that arm in a number of different spots when they make contact. To follow through, both guys are extending out in the direction that they're hitting the ball, and then they turn their forearm and their wrist over, bring the racket across their body in a smooth and relaxed motion to slow themselves down. So we've just seen something very interesting. Up till now, all the amateur forehands we've looked at have seemed a little bit off. But that last forehand Kevin hit, it looked great. It looked a lot like Tommy Haas's forehand. And that's the point. That's the point we are getting at our teaching. The key to having a high-level forehand is not in these small details, the angle of your wrist, how you take the racket down. It's in the big stuff. And an amateur like Kevin, an amateur like you at home, can have a very high-level forehand, a forehand that looks very close to the pros simply by focusing on and executing these 5 fundamentals each and every time you hit. So let's bring in one more amateur, me, because we haven't seen an amateur yet who has all 5 fundamentals and does them every single time they hit a forehand. And this is what that looks like. This is me hitting forehands on a ball machine, and you can see this looks like a fundamentally sound forehand. Well, if you remember back to the beginning of this email course, I said that what separates amateurs from professionals is the fundamentals. Well, if I have a fundamentally sound forehand, why am I not a professional? I mean, I'm nowhere near the professional level. Well, it's not just a matter of having the fundamentals. It's a matter of execution, how well you do it. Tommy Haas, for example, has better execution, hits harder, more spin, more pace, way better timing. He's practiced for 20 years every single day. And he's a way better athlete than I. But that doesn't matter. You don't need to practice every single day for 20 years to hit a high-level forehand. What you need to do, you certainly need to practice,